Closet podcast. As always, I am Dr. Sam, and with me is Dr. Robert. How are you?
Good. How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm getting notifications that my kid's bus is getting to their school. I was like, what's dinging me right now?
Oh, no,
But
so
that's what that is. So I'm glad you're feeling better. We missed you on the last podcast. We had a guest, so I wasn't by myself, but we did miss you.
well, I was bummed I missed that one because Just Food for Dogs is a pretty cool company, and but I listened to the podcast afterwards, and it sounded great. So
Good. I'm glad. I actually thought it was really interesting because I just liked the fact that we got to sort of round things out a little bit because that was like the one type of food we hadn't had a chance to really talk to. And we've kind of done a little bit of toppers in the past, and then I don't know. I like the fact that you can sort of use their food that way. I also really liked the fact that like you can make your own if the expense is just too much to buy it. So I liked that they had all the different options. I was really pleased to kind of learn about that myself and
yeah,
talk to a veterinarian. So I thought that was really cool. It's helpful for me in practice. So hopefully it's helpful for people who listen.
absolutely. Yeah, I think it gives me a lot more tools to talk to people about too, which I'm really excited about because I hope to dispel maybe some rumors about certain products, and
Oh,
I don't know, some things I might change my own pets too. So very exciting, and we appreciate all our guests for stopping on board because it meant a lot to our listeners and to ourselves as well.
oh yeah, for sure. It was so appreciated. So I'm and a lot of fun too. I mean, I could have just kept talking for hours. Which I was like, "Oh man, we really need Robert to keep me on track here. Keep me from talking all day."
Well, you do a great job, and I always appreciate it. So thanks for holding down the fort because I'm getting mostly better. My cough
Yeah,
dropped
you
a bit.
sound better. You sound better. But yeah, I know you had like no voice. So I was like, "Well."
Great, can't wait. So, but excited to be here today, and as we talk about,
Yeah, so this is a good segue because we kind of talked a little bit about like some things we could do at home, when we had an owner with like itchy skin and um that sort of like maybe inspired us a little bit today to talk about kind of two different things. So one, are there other like home remedies when your dog has or your cat, both dogs and cats have allergies? Like what are some things we can do in our environment and just like some things to remember about allergies just this time of year? We've talked about before, but we'll kind of maybe frame it slightly differently. And we never really talked about allergies in cats, so we can maybe do a little bit of conversation about, well, is it different than in dogs? What does it look like? How common is it? And maybe just a little just touch on that a little bit towards the end.
yeah, and it's how it affects us too as people.
Mhm.
Obviously we get allergies to pets, and sometimes some of these things can actually help all those things. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, excited to share a couple of these things because I know there's a lot to talk about. So we'll get
Yeah,
started.
for sure. And I can tell you like so my mother is really really allergic to like cats and animals and everything. So when she comes to visit, we do really try to do some of these sort of environmental decontamination things in our own house before she comes to visit just so that really she's more comfortable when she's here. And some of them are common sense, but like some things you may not realize you need to do. And so, I mean, like the easiest one, right? I mean, like vacuum, right? I mean, vacuum,
Oh
get
yeah,
up the pet hair, get up the dander, and try if you can to throw that vacuum, like the contents just right out, like get it out, try not to breathe in that dust, get it outside right away. And that's a twofold reason. I mean, if you do ever have any sort of like ectoparasites like um fleas or anything like that, they get
mhm.
into the environment and one flea lays 1,000 eggs and they can sort of hang out in your house and you be amazed how much vacuuming and getting it out of your house makes a huge difference.
Oh, absolutely. And I think if you have the opportunity to use one, if it works for your house, one of those like robot vacuums, they
Yeah.
are wonderful. I know they're expensive, but I recently got one that does like mopping and vacuuming. It's really been a godsend because like I'll be out of the house or I'll even be in the house. I'll just set to work while I'm working. And the house looks better afterwards. Like it's a lot of that dander up all the time. So
Yeah.
if the opportunity arises, go for it because it's wonderful.
Yeah, I know. You told me about that one, and we have like an old school one that well, technically it vomits. I mean, vomits. It vacuums.
Just pops up.
I literally just left work and have to go back to work in like a minute. So my brain is like, I was just talking about vomiting, and so clearly it's still there. But what was I gonna say? Yeah, no, our guy is supposed to do both, Wally, but
Mhm.
you have to switch out stuff, and I think you got the newer one that's like it can just do both, right? Like without you.
Yeah, that's been like the best thing. I'll share with people afterwards because honestly, I think it's wonderful, but it saves me time and it does a really good job of just keep my house clean. So,
Yeah.
um, it's a good thing for like maintenance, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, it sounds great. Maybe one day when I can like, get a cool one like that, I'll like put my other one upstairs where it's just carpet and then downstairs where, then they can kind of do both. But
Vacuum.
we're not quite there yet. I think we gotta let Wally live here a little longer before we can upgrade, but that's okay. That's okay. Um, but also too, one thing that we started doing for my mom is we have an air filter. So we have a
Mhm.
whole home one that we have to change and make sure because they're not all created equally. Like there are definitely some that are meant more for like pet dander, pet hair and stuff like that. So um, if you haven't changed yours in a while, change it. It makes a big deal, make big difference. But then also like we just got this one on Amazon that is like for like smaller rooms,
I
just
don't know.
to make it for my mom that extra little bit. And it really made a difference for her. Like she definitely seemed more comfortable this time. Because we also do have the guinea pigs in the basement, which is where our spare room is. So like
Okay.
we really try to like make sure that we're doing everything we can to sort of purify the air where she's going to be sleeping.
That's really thoughtful because like honestly, like having allergies can be miserable.
Mhm.
So you have like be able to sleep easier, especially when people are in your home. Hell, that was growing up, my mom was always like super clean in our home because we had like two dogs and two cats, and
Mhm.
she didn't want people to know that we had animals. I'm like, you're not going to hide it, but
Right, right.
I think keep in mind for people that do have allergies because even exchange, there's a, and I can't remember the company exactly, unfortunately, but they had a pink filter for like your air conditioning,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah. Mhm.
like almost like HEPA filters. They use it in NASA actually. It's fantastic.
Yeah, no,
Not
that's for real. It's not, yeah, it's not bunk. Like it's actually true. And the thing is, sometimes like when you realize the air quality in your house like isn't as good, you go and switch that, and you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing that. Like in some homes, it's like every 3 months, every 6 months. It really depends. So if you live in an apartment, it's a little harder if that's out of your control. But if you have your own house and you can sort of set like reminders to do that, I think
Mhm.
it's super, super helpful.
Yeah, it's honestly it's a huge thing. I highly recommend it. I want to say the company's name was Colorfill, but they're definitely check it out. It's built for pets and really helps. Like I said, NASA's using it now too. That's how great it is. So highly
Mhm.
recommend you checking it out.
Yeah, yeah. If we find the link, send it. We can put a link on it or something like
Good one.
that on our
Yeah, I'll
socials.
definitely do that.
Um but yeah, and then I mean like there are some other sort of like things that if you feel like you're seeing a little bit of an uptick in some allergies, not just like the itchy allergies, but some dogs will get like a little bit of, more mucoid discharge in here. Even some cats too. And if you think of like the environment's part of it, you can give antihistamines to animals. And in
Mhm.
some cases, even like people will notice increase in like reverse sneezing. Sometimes like postnasal drip will cause like anything that irritates the nasopharynx. Like sometimes they'll you like, in the dogs.
That's a
Like,
really good impression, Sam. I love that.
thank you. Thank you. I lived with a Frenchie for a long time. So and
That's
I know
true.
not everybody's looks like that, but when you
They look very similar.
yeah. They sort of look panicked for a minute, but and cats
Yep.
can reverse sneeze, which is interesting because I feel like people don't realize that as much, but usually there is some irritant or something irritating their nasopharynx. So it's not quite as benign necessarily as dogs, although it can be. Just you should get those checked out if your cat's reverse sneezing. Um, but you can sometimes an antihistamine will help a little bit with some dogs. Not everybody, and it really depends on why they're reverse sneezing. Um, and while it's benign, it's not fun to watch. So if you
Absolutely.
can give them some relief with Benadryl or Zyrtec or one of those, then I would say talk to your veterinarian about what the right dose for your pet is.
Exactly. And then you give a dose for yourself too if you have allergies. So really make
Exactly,
sure.
exactly. And also knowing too that like making sure that you're doing it more than just one like here and there. I definitely think you don't realize that like giving it a few days in a row really does make quite a bit of a difference.
Yeah, about that in particular is I think people don't realize like you have to keep it consistently like every 8 hours because like the allergens that bind the receptors they stay there until like they kind of fall off, but the Benadryl won't take them off of it. So you have to kind of wait for the Benadryl to take over, and then the Benadryl will stay on there
Hmm.
as like preventative, like to prevent the allergy. But like you have to give it consistently. If you give it once in a while, the allergens just bind to those receptors, and you still have the allergies. So
Yeah.
definitely make sure you take it consistently.
Hmm. And then like I think, um, you know, it's hard because there's also like irritants, right? So like certain things that people don't think about, and maybe it's not really mm, classically like an allergy, but if you're a smoker, making sure that you're not smoking in the home is a major thing. And I find that being in Indiana in the winter, we'll see a real uptick. And you
Yeah.
think about like, oh, summer, but like you forget that like there are times where animals are being exposed to irritants, and I have seen it make a huge difference
Mhm.
in animals if people just go outside and don't, like really don't allow that in their house. It makes an enormous difference for both cats and dogs. I'd say especially cats, because they don't go out
Yes.
as much.
I'll say cats 100%. I diagnosed two cats like very early on, they're like 1 or 2 years old with feline asthma,
Mm.
and it's because the owner, this case actually candles. They have a truck put in
Yes.
their home, and you don't think about it because you're like, oh, it smells good. You don't think like you are burning something.
Yeah.
It's what you're doing. It's a carcinogen, and or it
Hmm.
just adds the inflammation in their airway. So definitely like smoking. I know weed's a big thing these days. Even if you're using like a vaporizer or whatever the fancy
Yeah.
term is, like they still have things in the air that can bother your pets. So when in doubt, either one, open a window or just do it outside because it makes it so much easier for your pet.
Well, especially now too. I mean, I guess I'm in Indiana, but it's like legal in Michigan. Like nobody really is getting their, panties in a twist about people smoking pot, I feel like for the most part. So just, and also that's like just like a total PSA. Maybe we'll talk about this another time. I don't know, write it down. But like actually marijuana toxicity in dogs. I don't remember if we ever talked about it, but like
I don't know if
um
we haven't actually.
I don't know, but like don't lie about it. Like we don't care. If you go to my hospital or Roberts and your dog has gotten into weed, we're so happy because it looks so dramatic, but it's total they're going to be fine, and don't
Yeah,
lie to us about it cuz we're going to figure it out, number 1, but number 2, it's the best case scenario. Otherwise, I got to figure out what weird neurologic horrible thing is happening to your animal.
exactly.
That's
That
going
was
to
gonna
cost you way more money, so don't lie about it. We don't care.
yeah, this is an easy fix, just be honest, because otherwise I
Yeah.
spend more time trying to figure it out than I don't need to, and it's just I don't know. The number of owners like, oh, it's so weird. He must have been on a walk or it's in the backyard. I'm
Like,
like, that's
we
fine.
don't care.
So, for God's sakes,
Although I'm sure a few kids have gotten in trouble, like whose parents didn't know. Like
uh,
suddenly the dog got high and you're like, where did that come from? Don't think it
that
came
happened a
from
couple times in
grandma.
Chicago, actually. Chicago is because it wasn't legal back when I was in Chicago and it'd be emergency. They come in and there'd be the kid in the room and they're like, we don't smoke marijuana in our house. And got very silent. I'd leave. I come back 10 minutes later and like, we found out where it came from. And I'm like, figured you did. So
That's when you kind of want to be like, hey, do you want a tour of the hospital, young person? Come here. Was it weed? Okay, yeah, cool, we're fine.
so it's
Yeah.
but I'm glad things are changing. It makes the life usually easier for those conversations.
Well, especially like I think now that, people are like, oh, well, Michigan, and you know what I mean? Every once in a while we'll still get somebody that lies about it, but like for the most part, I think people are getting a lot cooler, especially because like a lot of the CBD chews
Mhm.
still have THC in them, even though
Yeah.
technically they're not supposed to, but like, so I
Yeah.
do think people are getting a little more open about it. And I'm always like, if that's what it is, just tell me because it's way better. Don't lie about it, please.
100% agree. It's way easier to deal with. So
Yeah.
when in doubt, just be honest.
Be honest,
Um,
we're not going to judge you. Um and then I did learn about something recently which I think is like really helpful. So a lot of dogs, I'd say dogs more than cats, get what seems like an allergic conjunctivitis where it's not they
mm,
don't have like a bacterial infection or a viral infection. And I think a lot of times people see mucoid discharge right here. It's called the medial canthus, like right where the eyes are right by where your nose is. And just for those that aren't looking at me, what are they talking about? But They get this like buildup of of just like mucoid stuff, and it looks maybe greenish, maybe a little yellowish, but that doesn't mean it's infected. And I think people think, you know, anytime the eyes are draining, that means that they have an infection. That is
Yeah.
not true. And even sometimes like the conjunctiva, so the like white part, or even the third eyelid that comes up, that part in the middle that pops up,
Yeah.
that'll get a little red or inflamed. As long as your dog is not squinting or batting at their eye like it's painful,
Yeah.
um, or like not able to open the eye because of all the discharge that's there, a lot of times there's two things you can do. One, you can just try lubricating the eye. First off, even if there is a corneal ulcer there, you're not going to hurt it by putting natural tears in, sterile lubricant, something like Sustain, Genteel, like one of those over the counter dry eye sort of things. It's just lubricating the eye.
Yeah.
Never put Visine in your dog's eye. Like that gets the red out. Don't do that. Don't do
Yes.
that. But just the lubricant itself, um, even if there's a corneal ulcer, you're not going to hurt anything. But a lot of these guys come in and they just have allergic conjunctivitis, and there is an over the counter antihistamine drug. It's called Pataday, and it is great for a lot of these guys that just get the itchy eyes, not the like, skin around it where it's puffy and angry and all those. Those usually have to be seen because they have what's called the periocular dermatitis, which is usually like part of an allergy as well. But
Yeah.
sometimes, that topical antihistamine, again, even if they have an ulcer, which you really need to go to your doctor if that's the case. Just
Yeah.
gonna put that out there. If your dog is squinting, if your dog is batting at the eye, rubbing its face, like that kind of stuff, get it checked because a corneal ulcer can get bad and eyes go bad fast. But for those ones where they're waking up with like, and people are like, oh, they keep waking up and there's a bunch of gunk in their eyes, I think they have an infection. I bet you if you start flushing the eye or putting Pataday in it, probably take care of it a lot of the times.
I appreciate that. Actually, I got to follow up with you after this podcast for that question. So,
Yeah.
a personal thing. But yeah, I'll say that's because it happens a lot. Because a lot of people they don't know what's wrong with the eyes, and the eyes are so important that they can get bad very quickly if you're not paying
Hmm.
attention.
Yeah.
Um, but just like cats and dogs and people, you get
Well, and I've
allergies and
had a lot of people too, because they'll have gotten maybe like one of those triple antibiotics with a little dexamethasone in it, which is a steroid, at like
mm,
previous times. And then
yeah,
they think they can just put it in the eye again. And I'm like, you really shouldn't be just putting antibiotics and steroids in eyes without having them checked first. Even if you have some left over, I don't care. I tell people, save it, no problem. If we can use it again in the future and you don't have to buy it again, no problem. But
yeah,
don't just put it in the eyes, because if there is an ulcer, or you're just putting something in an eye that just needs to be lubricated, well, you could be causing, antibiotic resistance, or you really could, if there's a ulcer, it's not going to heal and it's going to get worse with the dexamethasone. So
yeah.
PSA, don't just put eye meds in the eye. Just go to your doctor. But if it's just a little bit of sleep and they're just a little bit red, you can try the Pataday or just lubricating it. It really makes a difference.
Oh, that's good to know. I appreciate that. So,
Yeah.
fun thing to learn about was Dr. Sam.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I wish that I could even take credit for that, but that actually came from one of the ophthalmologists at Purdue, because there
Oh,
was a
nice.
dog that kept coming in with allergic conjunctivitis. Like we would do cytology and there was nothing, there was no bacteria or anything like that. It was just, I mean, maybe it was viral, but honestly, you just would lubricate the eye and it would be fine. And he was like, well, you could also add Pataday. I was like, what is this Pataday you speak of? Nobody ever taught me this. And so I learned it from him. And actually, what's funny is my mom, when she was here,
Yeah.
Gus, like, can just find people who are allergic to him, and then
Mhm.
he wants to rub all over them. So even despite all of our environmental decontamination, he just was like a missile. Like my mom, who's just like, I'm just gonna give me love the whole time. So her eyes were getting a little bit itchy, and she grabbed some Pataday, and no more itch the rest of the time she was here.
Hey, that's nice. I love that. That's good to know.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So just so you know, it is a human medication. If you're looking for it, don't look for the animal Pataday. It's human.
over the counter?
Yeah,
Oh, nice. Cool. See,
because it's
interesting.
not harmful. You know what I mean? It's not going to cause a problem. So, but it's not something, I don't know where I'm kind of like, why did you and I were on Opto together. We never learned this.
That's we were on Alpha together. God, takes me back. Yes. It's been a while. But yeah, I also feel like there's so
Yeah,
many things.
it's been a few
I need,
years since then.
I need to reflect. It's almost been, what, we come up on 10 years now, almost?
We're getting close.
9 9 years almost now.
It's 9 years because next year, 2025 will be 10 years.
So we are aging gracefully. That's what we're having.
Yes,
So
you look like the youth that I remember meeting.
and you look better, so you're cheating somehow, but
Yeah, it's nice of you to say. I like that. It's very nice.
uh
Not true, but very nice.
so but yeah, I think those are some of the big ways you can help pets when they're having and people
Yeah,
when they're having issues with allergies in the home. Those are some of the big ways. If there's something more serious than that, like environmental allergens and food allergies, obviously you should go talk to your vet always. But those are
always,
good places
always.
to start
And
wise.
and remember too, this time of year when you're seeing some of these allergies kick up, this is when you're going to see some of those environmental allergies that are going to be skin issues, that are going to be ear issues, that are going to be things that you do need to go see your vet for, because when they have infection, nothing you do for the itch is going to go away in face of infection. You have to get it checked. You also have to remember that one of the biggest things that animals are allergic to are fleas. So if you're not keeping them on flea preventative, yes, it's not going to probably show up as a, sneezing and watery eyes, but still, it's still an allergy and you should really make sure you're staying on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's the best segue into cats.
And yes.
Because I think it bears like repeating probably every day and shouting from the rooftops that cats, they absolutely can get fleas if they never step outside. And I have had so many people like look at me like I had 18 heads when I have been like, I think the reason why your cat's over grooming is allergies. And I think it's to fleas, but
Mhm.
and then they put them on Revolution and no, it gets better. It's like,
Goes away. It's so weird.
How did that happen? And it's just because they overgroom, you know what I mean? They are so good at grooming that they eat them before, we can
Yeah,
find them. So, a lot of times that's a big thing. But also, some cats really do. They do get, you know, allergies that we really need to sort of nail down. And it's a process, I think, with cats. A lot of times I'll tell people, depending on how it's manifesting, right? I mean, like, is it more that we're seeing, like we said, changes with the eyes, changes with the ears, the skin? How is it going? I'd say usually cats that have, reactive airway issues, so like asthma, obviously
yeah,
that's a totally different. I mean, we could probably talk about feline asthma one day because that's a totally different conversation and there's a few different ways to treat that.
yeah,
But yeah, they can, I mean, and they can also sometimes need some antihistamines as well, and you can use them in cats, but you should definitely call your vet before you just start giving it to them.
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a feeling asthma. Yeah, it's a whole different topic, or a very large topic in itself. And there's a lot of
Right.
medications that are progressive. It can be challenging to treat in some cases, so it can be
Mhm.
scary. So it's definitely something to talk to your vet about and get on long-term plans.
Yeah. But with cats, like usually the way that I kind of approach it, especially like for those indoor guys that are not on preventative, that's usually what I'll say first. Cause a lot of times it comes to us like they're over grooming or they're pulling or they have miliary dermatitis or something like that. And I'm like, well, or sometimes they have big plaques of, big angry red plaques. And so flea control is like number one. But then a lot of times I will change their diet. I'll change their diet to like a hydrolyzed diet, because man, if we can control it with diet and flea preventative, then we don't have to go to the next step.
Oh, absolutely. Do you see a lot of cats with food allergies, do you think?
Mm, so I would say I see more cats that seem to benefit from the hydrolyzed diet trial than the dogs that do.
No, really.
But I
Interesting.
don't think it's a lot. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It's not
makes
a
sense.
lot. But I
Yeah,
do think that I definitely have seen a few more that when we do that, get everything under control and then get them on the hydrolyzed diet, they are able to stay without having to be on pred all the time and all sorts of stuff. But
that's not.
I have seen a lot more cats that do have like atopic dermatitis, or like basically skin allergies that come up, in the um spring, whenever it is, whenever that is that they react to things. So I've been using a lot of cyclosporin in cats, I have to say, like a
Uh,
lot. Yeah, because I don't find Apoquel to be that helpful for them. Just in my hands, I just haven't seen it work great.
okay.
And I don't like to keep them on pred long term. if I can, get them onto something different, which
Sure.
I have gotten really lucky with that like a lot of the cats that have come in and we've kind of gone through the like, okay, get them on flea preventative, we put them on pred to get the itch to go away and get the skin to, clear up and all that
Yeah.
stuff, and then in the meantime we're getting them on the diet, and then if that controls it, great, we're done. But if it doesn't, then I'm usually going to transition them over to cyclosporin. And the thing that's nice about it is I have ones that like they give it once a week, you know what I mean, like once they get to the point where they get it on board, and then when they flare
Yeah.
they can go back to once a day. But I have a handful that, I mean, can't even do it every other day. Like if they'll be itchy and start to overgroom if, as soon as they go down too much. So it just really
No, no.
depends on the cat.
Okay, it's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, allergies I don't always deal as much with, so it's always nice to hear from a person who.
Well, it's because it's a chronic progressive disease, right? I mean, and I will say I have had the dermatologists before recommend Apoquel in certain cases. Um, and it's a higher dose in cats, I believe, the last time
Oh,
I checked into it.
that makes sense.
Hmm. But no matter what, I mean, I think the fact of the matter is, anytime you're getting into those meds, I mean, they do start to get expensive. So if you can do one where you can wean it down to the lowest effective dose, that's probably best.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because the cost is only getting worse. Actually, a future podcast, we should talk about the new New York Times article and another Wall Street article about the cost of pet care, and
Oh,
we may bring those up at future conversations. But that reminded me for future.
yes, yes, yes. I mean, it is actually amazing how much more I've been talking to people about, like, doing insurance and stuff like that, because as a veterinarian, like, we have all these things we can do to help, and like Apoquel is great, and cyclosporin is really good, like Atopica. But if people can't afford it, because they don't need to afford it for 1 month, they have to afford it for the dog or cats the rest of their life in a lot of cases.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Uh,
and also too, I mean, then you're also starting to kind of get into a place where it's like there are also side effects sometimes to these medications when they're on it for years and years and years, and then like, but they can't live without it. So then you got to deal sometimes with what the repercussion of the medicate, you know what I mean? And it's like, you do the best you can, but you really do need people to be prepared and sort of try to talk about what to watch for, in different medications, and be prepared to deal with it. But thankfully I've been fairly lucky. I don't see as much allergies in cats as dogs. Does that I see a lot more dogs with allergies than cats.
yeah, it's I feel like I see a lot more dog allergies than cats overall, but
And I
um,
don't know if it's because some people don't, because cats are so good at hiding stuff, like they maybe don't recognize certain things. But I would say we've got great owners that like really know their cats. They seem to really know, like, when they're not comfortable, or you know what I mean? And
yeah,
it is an interesting time where you're seeing this sort of juxtaposition between like people are wanting to do more for their pets, they're
yeah.
more aware of when things are going wrong, but then everything is more expensive. So it's a very odd space to be in. And I don't know if that's just because like we're getting better at certain things in medicine. So whenever that happens, it becomes more expensive. I really don't know. I don't know the answer.
Nor do I, unfortunately. I think part of it is we're getting better. So I think there's a
Yeah.
lot more saying like people are trying to treat their pets like they would their kids, so they're doing the extra step and they want to do those things, and so I think that's a big part of it. But it's expensive,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Certainly
sad.
can get expensive.
Yeah.
Um, and just like one other thing I guess about cats with allergies, some of them will get like and dogs too, like chin acne.
Oh yeah.
And so sometimes part of the environment that you need to help take care of is like switching their bowls to stainless steel and making sure that you're sanitizing them regularly,
Oh
because things like ceramic and plastic leach bacteria into it. So even when you clean it, it's not effectively cleaning as much. And so it will hold on to the bacteria, and um, they can get chin acne. I don't know what made me think of that, but I was just like, well, that's one extra thing that you
no,
probably
that's good to know. See, the only things I didn't even know because I just don't have to deal with those things that often. And now that I'm starting a little bit of general practice work, I need to know these things. So really, this is like an
yeah.
educational podcast for me too. So forget
Glad
all
you
the words. I'm
glad
just
you
me from my education period. So
I'm your CE. Yay, look at me.
want to sign off on it?
If only
Robert,
I had that power. I really wish I did. That would be kind of cool.
I'd be all about it. Send me but we could do a podcast a week and we have our CV for the year. It'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be great. You'll teach me all the emergency stuff. I'll
Yeah.
go through all the
Probably
yeah.
beat the system, Sam. So anyway,
But yeah,
uh,
I mean, I think that that's pretty much what we can do without necessarily getting into getting your pet to the vet. I mean, I think with the cat allergy stuff, you really need to work with your vet for sure. It's something you need to do. But ultimately, just try to have a good relationship with your vet. Like, and if you don't have a vet that will answer questions like that, like over in like an email, or if you can't call and get information from the staff, like maybe they're not your best partner.
your statement. So, but yeah, I think it's good information for today, and then hopefully we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, I had lots of fun. It was good to get to talk to you in the middle of the day. This is like totally
I know.
different than usual, but now I got to go run back to work and make sure that we hold down the fort for the rest of the day, but I do appreciate everybody for listening. This has been the Pause It podcast. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks, guys.